Greetings, everybody. Welcome back to another live witches chat, and we're not, yeah, okay. I'm learning, okay. But anyways, hi, hello, holy shit, what is up? How have y'all been? Um, it's been crazy, busy, really good though. So we're good with that. Um, but hi, hello. I've said that way too many times. I am firelotusthewitch. If you do not know, I've been doing these here on my YouTube page for an entire year. Good morning. Hello. And I've been doing this in general for about 5 years now, roughly give or take a year. Um, and in these lives, we go over anything spirituality and witchcraft. We don't really talk about religion or politics. But other than that, depending on where the comments go. Hello. Hi. Um, good morning, everybody. So for one, there are a couple of things we're going to address. Because I did a video and it caused a shit ton of confusion. So we're gonna nip that in the bud. Also, I do have a new episode, hopefully on my podcast, either coming out today or possibly tomorrow. And I interviewed a creator named Lucky13. Hold that thought. Okay, I can't deal with that. Oh my god, I hate this month. Not really. Um, but yeah, so that will be hopefully out very soon. I've just got to actually go in and make sure like everything's okay with that. And then if you haven't already, you totally need to go listen to the episode or the podcast that I was featured on. Um, I have some health issues going on with my father-in-law, and my mom's updating me, and all it's doing is stressing me out. Because if at any point in time anything happens to him, it is going to completely chaos will perform. And if that happens, my content will, yeah, I'm not even getting into that. But yeah, also hello. Um, yeah, they have that amazing ability of texting someone when, yeah. But anyways, that's what's going on there. And then retrogrades. Um, hello. So, but yeah, I was featured on a podcast, Coven of the Rejects. You can find it on Spotify, Applecast, Anchor, and most other platforms. That's an amazing episode, and the episode that I did for my podcast will also be amazing. I just got to get around to actually editing it and posting it. But anyways, let's talk. Okay, so I was doing the scrolling on the TikTok app, and somebody created a video that I wish a lot of people would watch their videos before they repost them. Basically, this creator said about needing a break for family. We all understand. Oh, I know. It's just basically I'll be uprooted and have to go to Alabama for like a week, hopefully, if that. But they created a video. They went to some like gathering, and a Reiki master told them that the secret to their food, their vegetables, and their flowers is using graveyard dirt in your garden. And I made a video on it, and it created mass confusion because people took from that video, oh, well, you're not supposed to use graveyard dirt at all. No, that's not the point of that video. Um, right? So basically what I meant in that video is, can you use graveyard or cemetery dirt in your practice? Yes, you can. I did recently find out that it's theoretically illegal to remove dirt from a cemetery, but I digress. You can use cemetery dirt and graveyard dirt in your practice as long as it is not directly from a grave. Now, if you do collect dirt from a grave, you need to know that person extremely well when it comes to incorporating that into your practice. Perfect example, in Appalachian folk magic, they suggest just vlog occasionally if you feel compelled to. Just take that break. Oh, I love that idea, actually. Oh, heck no, I don't use anything Reiki other than my own energy and earth energy. It's technically theft from the graveyard. Exactly. But the reason, like in Appalachian folk magic, if you need legal matters, right? You would collect graveyard dirt from a judge, same with the police officer and stuff like that. The problem with this is most judges and other things of that matter, a lot of them can be crooked in life. So if you use that in your practice, depending on how they were, it can radically, completely fuck your entire spell that you're doing it for. Another example, if you randomly collected dirt from a grave, not knowing that person, and come to find out that person was a mass serial killer, and you're trying to use that dirt for a protection spell, that's not really going to work. I actually got a comment, if I wanted to annoy an ancestor, could I use their dirt? Yes, you could. I would advise against that because spirits have their own rules. We have rules because we're stuck in these meat suits in this fucking crazy ass fucking rock that's flying through space, while spirit, on the other hand, they can do pretty much whatever the fuck they really wanted, depending on what they want to do. Um, get dirt from a courthouse or a police station. Exactly. You can get dirt from a courthouse, a police station, a library, a bank, and you can use that for that. Now, another alternative two alternatives that I know of, one of them I created my own recipe, which is basically false graveyard dirt. The base of that using ground coffee grounds, and then herbs that are associated with spirit communication, or any herbs that would strengthen that communication. Now, the other one is using dead plant dirt, which I do like. I've yet to need graveyard dirt. I have graveyard dirt. I have the dirts that I use in my practice. I have 100 and almost 70-year-old, I think. The graveyard that I collected it from was from the Civil War, to the point where it was still split down the middle about who's buried where. Um, but it's not technically dirt as much as it's a rock, or the old school brick that they would use. I got a piece of that, and then I have what I call Seven Sister Crossroad, which is basically crossroad dirt from 7 different crossroads that I've basically mixed together. Now, before you go and even think about collecting said dirt, for one, again, you're not going to do it from a grave. Well, the problem with that is, unless you know the history of a graveyard or a cemetery, they move a lot of things, which means there could be unmarked graves. The best thing to do is get it from the entry point. I've never heard anybody talk about road crossing dirt. Oh, yes, I love it. I love crossroad dirt. And I also especially love it because, like, depending on where you're at, like me right now, there are 7 crossroads that technically, from the beginning of the road that I live on all the way here. The problem is I live bumfuck in the middle out in the nowhere, which means I am 98% sure I would either get shot or the cops would be called if I'm at a graveyard at 12 o'clock. I mean, if I'm at a crossroad at 12 o'clock at night. So the alternative to that, obviously do the proper steps of asking, making sure it's okay, and making sure you don't have any hitchhikers, because crossroad dirt, you can get a lot of hitchhikers coming back to your house. But what's cool about this is if you bring it from your house safely and bring it to your home, you can open a connection to that crossroad, but being able to access that energy from your own home. So basically, you're bringing a sacred crossing or a lineal space back to your actual house. What is it used for? Graveyard dirt can be used for, crossroad dirts can be used for a lot of things. You know how most people use salt to create a circle? Well, some Southern conjurers and Appalachian folk practitioners and or traditional witches will use this to actually open up a sacred space. But it's a in-between. So it's very, very powerful depending on where you go. You can also make deals or commune with spirits there. Primarily, depending on what lore you're looking at, you're probably gonna hear the terms either the Witch Father or the Man in Black. Not to start that conversation, but basically it's the devil, but not the Christian aspect of the devil, the actual devil. He's extremely associated with that. Obviously, if you do hoodoo or any type of voodoo, and before anybody starts, if you've been following me for a while, there are different types of voodoo. Some are closed as an initiated only, and others, as long as you do enough research and as long as the spirits of said practice identify you with another practitioner of that actual practice, you can be taught that. But you'll hear, and I'm going to butcher this, Papa Laboa and other things like that. But specifically, it's a soft shell turtle. Specifically though, make sure you are not being followed, or make sure that there's not a trickster spirit around that area where the crossroads are at. Graveyard dirt is going to be different. Okay. I'm making sure that it doesn't have to crawl up here because I don't feel like running outside looking like this, having to jump my neighbor's fence to try to get it back out there. But anyways, cemetery or graveyard dirt, it's different. And the reason that's different is because you have what is known as a protector, a guardian of said cemetery and or graveyard. Um, Depending on where you're at is to kind of depending on what the definition of that guardian is. In a lot of southern graveyard cemeteries and or Appalachias, they believe that the very first person to be buried there, aka the oldest spirit, becomes the guardian. You do not want to piss off a guardian because that bitch will wreck your life. And I do mean it will not just stay at the cemetery or graveyard, it can follow you back. So, graveyard etiquette. Announce yourself, announce that you are a practitioner and the reason you were there. Go with your gut. If you get that feeling like you should not be there, do not try to do it. Always give an offering that can be pennies, wine, liquor, cigarettes, tobacco, things like that. Leave it at the beginning as you walk in it, and then wherever the place is you find it, again, not on an actual grave. So I would actually avoid any dirt near trees because a lot of the times there'll be actually graves there. And then properly collect it, give more thanks, give another offering, and then leave. And if you want to, another way you can do this, if you have a local cemetery and or graveyard there without trespassing, go there and start walk around, kind of fix up the graves, replace the flowers, stuff like that, because what you're going to start doing is building that relationship with said cemetery and or graveyard. If you are a death witch or you're trying to get into necromancy or death magic, that is a great way of doing it. But before you do that and start hanging out in a graveyard or cemetery, you need to make sure you can sense energy very well. As in, you will be able to identify a trickster spirit versus a normal spirit. Because what a lot of people don't like talking about it, I don't like talking about it that much either because it automatically syncs up with demonic spirits. No. Trickster spirits, a lot of the times, they're going to present themselves to you in a form that's not threatening. AKA mostly half the time a kid or a little kid of some sort, because obviously most people would trust a kid versus a guy or this elderly woman. And then depending on the relationship, it kind of it's going good, and then all of a sudden weird shit will happen and or they'll start wanting weird things from you. Remember, most deities and spirits, they're not going to want your blood, they're not going to want your spit. Good morning. They're not going to make you do something and or want you to do something that you yourself normally would not do. If so, you need to reevaluate what you were doing and what energy you're messing with. Also with that, because my brain's oh, reminder. For anybody who does check out the newest episode of my podcast when it's released, there will be a trigger warning due to some of the conversations in that, as in we finally address the whole coyote bone situation. Human spirits are the worst, so I don't want them around. Exactly. There's a new spirit here, and the only reason I say there's a new spirit here is because all day yesterday I was trying to patty cake, which I do not do in any way, shape, or form. It's not even part of my stimming. So we have a new spirit here. Also be aware that bringing dirt, etc. past your wards brings spirits too. Yes, exactly. Thank you. Yeah, if you bring any type of dirt like that and there's a spirit attached to it, you're just giving them free reign onto your property. Again, with crossroad dirt, can a family member ashes work like graveyard dirt? Yes. Now that gets a little bit more in depth because with me, I have my grandmother's remains. Not that I would ever use that in my practice. It is on my ancestor altar. When using things like the remains of somebody, like ashes, a lot of people, and this is kind of that gray area to necromancy, a lot of people believe that will actually bind said spirit to whatever you put it in. There is a bottle that's called an Ancestor Bottle or a spirit bottle. This is actually one of the reasons that I created the recipe of graveyard dirt that I sometimes use versus actually going out what you're supposed to do, which is basically you get a jar And the bottom part is supposed to be either ashes and or an actual graveyard dirt from your actual family member's grave. And essentially what you're basically doing is binding said spirit to that bottle. That way you can commune with them. Obviously now people have took that and they just make spirit houses to where you're not binding a spirit to there. But if you are going to work with human remains, as in ashes, you need to make sure you are contacting with that spirit to make sure that spirit is okay with it. If not, this is the negative side of necromancy, because there are some rites that you can do to where you are physically going to a graveyard, you are summoning said spirit, and basically enslaving that spirit to work with you. Now, with that being said, can you make relationships or build relationships with spirits to where they're helping you, but you're also helping them? Yes, yes, you can. But again, when you're working with spirits, they are different than working with humans. Even if it's one of your ancestors, they're going to be slightly different in the afterlife. So always take that into account. And when collecting anything like this, like I said, listen to your gut. What do I mean by that? We all know that feeling that we got when we were a child and we walked past this creepy looking house and it was just like you need to walk the other way. If you get that feeling while collecting anything, you need to stop what you're doing and walk the fuck away. In other words, those spirits do not want you there and they do not accept what you're doing. Um, Now, a lot of people, there's still this argument that goes back and forth about, well, what if your ancestors were Christian in the living, when they were living? That goes into what you believe when a person transitions. I personally believe that some spirits do lose that like, oh, well, no, I'm a devout Christian versus, oh, well, I'm practicing witchcraft now. Um, Prime example, I've worked with two of my ancestors that have very, very well made their, when they were living, made their point that they had nothing to do with witchcraft. They wanted nothing to do with me. But after they passed away, I've been visited by them multiple times, which to me shows that it kind of goes with the universal language, which is like paranormal wise. Like, have you ever wondered how American people can go across the fucking world and start communicating with spirits, but using English instead of that spirit's native tongue? It's known as the universal language, which is basically, and it's my theory behind the Akasha records and the connected consciousness, which is basically when you pass away, um, when you fully transition over, like there are some things that you won't hold to you because it's kind of a more of a humanistic experience, if that makes any sense. There's another theory that I just heard that I wish I would have known about before, which is the 100 monkey experiment. Basically, at one point in time, scientists showed this one monkey that if he were to dip the sweet potato in the water and wash the dirt off, it becomes more tasty, right? So one monkey, monkey see, monkey do. So they started repeating it. But what they realized was after the 100th monkey of this community actually started doing it as well, they started seeing monkeys on different islands also do it. So it was the first real experiment that connected consciousness is a thing. Because how the fuck can monkeys being split by water, how would they know? You know what I mean? And these islands that they were saw doing it on, they're very, very far apart. It's not like they just saw it from the other shoreline. Um, and I believe the same is with us. In time, the ancestors grow when they become ancestor spirits and really start to see and understand things. Exactly, exactly. And that's what I believe as well. Like when I die, I'll go to the Summerland, which is basically, in my definition, a place that I can just chill out and kind of wait until my body is ready to be reformed. And or until I have a family member that wakes up and hears the calling of spirituality. Once that happens, then I will come and basically be the ancestral guide to help them guide them through their practice. At least that's what I'm hoping happens when I pass away. But just listen to your gut instinct when collecting things. Now, a lot of people still do that thing where, like, if you're outside before you pick something, you'll ask nature. I don't always do that. Like in my own yard, if I'm going to collect something, I'm not going to ask, hey, can I take this? But if you're somewhere else, especially sacred, like a graveyard or a cemetery, Yes. On top of that, do your research with those cemeteries. You do not want to go to, like, say, a Jewish cemetery because, yes, the Jewish mysticism, but different spirits. When it comes to anything native, always know that those spirits, they have a completely different book than we do. Um, I've seen and experienced things with native spirits when it comes to, like, accidentally pissing them off or something like that. Yeah. This also incorporates with land spirits as well. Build your relationship with the spirits around you because they can be extremely beneficial. Um, I'm trying to think what the other controversial things that I've been seeing. Also, can we please stop having these same damn conversations over and over again? They're still having the sage conversation. By the way, there are over 120 different species of sage. I just realized that I have makeup on my face. I used to ask, but after several years, I learned how to listen for general not feeling. Yes, exactly, exactly. And like I said, that feeling is going to be a feeling like, no, you should not be here, or you need to back the fuck away. Um, and believe it or not, I also don't fully understand where we got the concept that graveyards and cemeteries are always haunted. Because to me, it doesn't make sense because I'm like, wait, if the spirit passes over, then why would they be haunting their bodies? But again, that opens up way more questions than we have time for today. Good morning. Um, but yeah, working with your land spirits and things like that are very, very beneficial. Could you also create your own graveyard dirt or cemetery dirt? Yes, 100%. I had someone comment say that they have a cat that brings them a lot of wild animals, if you will. And they have a specific tree that they bury that under. It's a number game. There's bound to be one or two. I honestly believe that too, because I know that like every spirit's not just going to transition over. Now my biggest question that I'm recently about to ask TikTok, which is, do you believe if, since witches, primarily us, we specialize and dedicate our lives to learning energy work. So does that mean when we pass over, our transition should be smoother due to the fact that we theoretically understand how this works? I use my body as a pendulum. If I sway a bit while standing still, I'd leave the area slash place. See, I love that. I also love hearing how other people incorporate, and that's the like number one thing. That's called muscle testing. Oh, see, I didn't even know that. But this is one of the reasons I love doing these lives is because I love hearing how other practitioners listen to their own instinctualness. Because whether you're a seedling or a sprout, you will get to a point in your practice of where everything is almost instinctual. What do I mean by that? It's like I said with the books. I have probably over 200 books. But I rarely actually use everything in said books. If you do use a spell from a book, add something or take something away from it. You are the witch. It is your practice, it is your craft, which means you will be able to create new things. And that's honestly something that I wish more people would start realizing so we can stop having these dumb conversations about, oh, well, you can't use this in a hex, or oh, you can't do that with that herb. Why not? At one point in time, we had no correspondences for anything that we're fucking using right now. One day, somebody woke up and they're like, you know what? Bleeding heart. It looks like a bleeding heart. Turn it upside down, it looks like something completely different. Boom. Love magic, healing, all that shit. You yourself can create your own correspondences. With that being said, that does not always mean it's going to work. But that is the part of being a witch that's fun. Learning, trial and errors. And normally if you fuck up in magic, depending on how bad of a fuck up it is, you're not going to do it again. I have a stitch with you coming up later today that talks about your past life spell video. Oh, yes, I love it. It's a witch fail. Oh, I love it. And I also love hearing about witch fails. Like, more witches need to do that more because there's this assumption on the interwebs that, like, witches who knew what they're doing, they don't make mistakes. And that's complete and utter bullshit. We make all different types of fucking mistakes. It's part of the process of learning and growing your own practice and your own craft. And like people online overcomplicate some things. I have a whole section of my book that's dedicated to my failures. Oh, I love that. Um, but like talking to gods and goddesses, we go over this in the podcast. I felt constantly hot as a lesson. Exactly. Perfection is an ego problem. Exactly. See, I love this. And we brushed about what I'm about to talk about in the episode of the podcast, which is there's this concept that for one you have to be. That was not where I was going. What the fuck, brain? Past lives. Putting yourself in a box. No, that's not what I wanted to say. It'll come to me in a second. Oh dear, I make some beautiful mistakes even now, and I've been in it for 16 years coming up. Exactly. I made multiple mistakes when I first started my journey. Some of those mistakes I'm not actually going to talk about necessarily. But yeah, no, I've made lots of mistakes. The other thing is don't put yourself in a box. Like, do not put your... There's so much, that's one thing that's bugging the hell out of me. There's so much misinformation. But, and we go over it in the podcast, you're going to get to a point to where you're going to throw out everything you've ever been taught or learned, and you're just going to start all over, but start your way. Yes, I'm 23, and this first mistake was bad enough to cause permanent health damages, and I still make tons. Exactly. I also hope it heals and everything. Exactly, and that's something that also needs to be talked about, that a lot of people don't believe that you can actually physically be harmed if you do something wrong. You can, 100%. That's what I was going to talk about. There we go. I don't understand where this concept came from to where you have to wait for a deity to come to you, when I was taught that if you want to work with a deity, research them, obviously, set up a space for them, and start communing. They're not always going to answer, of course, but you don't always have to wait for them to come to you. You can go to them. Now, I will say in my experience, most times a deity does come to you, it's they're trying to help you with something, is what we do, we learn. Exactly. And with that, a lot of people online, thanks to the stupid, which, before I say this, I love that people do it, it's just people take that for face value. Working with a deity, they're not just going to pop up in your house unless you have the site. What's going to wind up happening is it's going to be a thought that kind of pops into your head. And this is going to set up for another conversation, which the conversation that I had with the host of Coven of Rejects, we talked about like the psychic medium. I technically fit all of those categories of being a psychic and being a medium. I just don't resonate with that. But with that being said, somebody made a video, and I fucking love it, which is like, basically tips on being mediumships. What mediumship and being a psychic is, and how you see all these people, it's confidence. Why is confidence so important? It's just with what I do. I have claircognizance, which means there are a lot of times I just know shit. But it took time for me to build that confidence up. And why is this important? For a psychic or medium, a lot of the times when you start seeing them fish, it throws people's trust off. What do I mean by fishing? They're going to ask questions that are basically, they're digging for information. In order to prevent that, you have to have confidence in your abilities. We have the same main Claire. Oh, I love it. But you have to find confidence in your ability. That is what makes a psychic and a medium, a psychic or medium, really. Besides the connections and talking and spirits and stuff like that, it's the confidence behind your power. Same thing with being a witch. You have to have confidence behind your power. In most earlier books, I don't know if they're still doing it now, primarily in Wicca, they teach you that you have to have authority. That's not saying you're powerful than the person you're working with or the god you're working with, but it shows authority, as in it shows confidence, that you yourself are confident in what you're saying and what you're doing and what you're trying to bring to you. It takes time to build it up. Ironically, I also learned something today. I love being claircognizant. I just blur things out to people without a second thought. Exactly. Like, I've done it to my partner. Last week and a half ago, his energy changed, and my brain was like, there's something fucking wrong. You need to go check. And it freaked him out because the situation that was going on, there's no way in hell I could have heard or anything like that. And it kind of jolted him because he was like, holy shit, like spot the fuck on. So what I suggest with that is find a couple of people that you trust that, you know, if you're off on the information you're saying, they'll be able to deliver that to you without like hurting you. But have a couple of trusted people and start using those abilities. That's what I started doing when I started doing these lives, and I still do it. There are multiple readings that I do where normally with me and what I'm learning with me and spirit communication is they kind of use my body as in there's that one reading where I started belting out Disney songs, which to Disney movies I've not even seen in like 10 years. Or the example where I started doing patty cakes. I'll pick up on what they did in life, and then I've trained myself to when I start doing that, my body is like, wait, this is not part of your daily ritual. What is going on here? And then like yesterday when that happened, because I'm still really bad at like honing in on the spirit that's trying to communicate with me, depending on what's going on. So like yesterday I was just like, look, I understand you're new here. I'm still trying to figure this out. The only thing that I ask, if you do show yourself to me, do not scare the shit out of me to where like I almost fall out a window or something like that. Um, and it kind of stopped. So it was almost like they wanted me to note it, like acknowledge that they were here. And that's what I'm realizing. That's how I'm channeling spirit. Because with the reading that I did, I was not expecting, hello. I was not expecting that. And as soon as I started singing the bare necessities, my brain's like, wait, what is this? And then I asked, and about the time I asked if there was a spirit here, I felt the spirit move over here to my shoulder, and my entire body just broke out and straight up like chicken skin, or goose skin, aka like goosebumps. And you will develop your own way of your body verifying, or what I call spirit verifying it's true. Like with me, sometimes my nose will itch. A lot of the times though, I'll just get a chill up here. And that's my way and spirit's way of validating what I'm saying is true and or right. Um, and then I've also successfully been able to see, I knew I was going to have to watch you turn back around and go back to the pond. Damn it. This is the only season I hate. I love it. It's beautiful. But this is the reason you don't put fences up in fucking nature. Sorry. I may have to rescue a turtle today. Um, but start practicing, and over time you'll build it up. But confidence is key, and that's so weird for me to say, especially if you know me in real life, because without me being in front of a camera, I don't have that much confidence in a lot of things that I do, except for when it comes to magic, when it comes to my readings, and when it comes to the information that I'm giving. um like here recently I used my cards, and that's going to go to the next conversation, because somebody who follows me stitched a video about the difference of tarot or oracle cards, and what they said completely blew my fucking mind, because I've never heard it and nobody's ever told me this. One of the prime differences between tarot and an oracle reader is an oracle reader is a channeler and tarot's not. And I stopped and I'm like, holy shit, it's right. That's the reason I love using oracle cards, because yes, I can read tarot cards, but when I did the interview with the maker behind Flowers from the Dead Oracle, they kept telling me, because I kept saying, you know, your cards are amazing, I can read them so well, and they're like, it's not the cards, it's you. And I didn't understand what they meant by that. Now I do. Basically, I'm using the cards as a crutch because I necessarily don't need them, but it's a way for me to validate what I'm reading. Because when I give a reading, um, I tell people, I'm like, I won't answer yes or no questions, as in like, yes, you need to do this situation or do not do that situation, as much as I give you tiny bits of insight. So when I read a card, it's almost like Jenga in a way, as in, I think I said that right. Yeah, Jenga that you shake and you throw. It's kind of, no, better example. Imagine getting a jigsaw puzzle, right? And shaking it up and just throwing it out on the table, right? And then mentally, it's like each card is an information. So every time I see a card, I'll get about a paragraph of information that I can use to basically put everything together, to kind of stitch everything together for that perfect example. And it's so weird too. Oh, she's laying eggs. Hey, babe, remind me that I need to monitor the dock. The neighbor's dock. There's a soft-shell turtle that's in the process of digging a hole to lay eggs. The reading you did for me was amazing. Oh, thank you, thank you. And that's what I was about to say. It's so funny because the readings that I question myself on after I've sent them are normally the ones that's like, yep, everything was spot on and correct. I was just like, and another person asked me, I think it was on the, actually it was the podcast, Coven of Rejects. Totally check them out. It's amazing. The creator's amazing. Everything is amazing about that. They asked me, they're like, well, since you do readings and stuff like that, do you do personal protections? And I'm like, no, why would I? And it's a great question, though, because a lot of people do. A lot of people will have certain rituals that they do to protect themselves from the energy that they're tapping into. But the way that I see it, that's the point of being a witch. Like, when you come to me for custom spell work, there's almost, because I've had people ask me, well, do you get a backlash from it? And I'm like, no. I'm not the person doing it. I am the conjurer. I conjure that energy and push it out. Same thing as with the cards. Yes, obviously I have my ancestors with me, but I don't need that type of protection because if I were to do a reading and something tried to attack me, that reading would not happen. But a lot of the times I've never really had to have that type of protection because I myself believe in my own protections. And the point of me saying that is you need to start believing in your magic. The more belief you have in your magic, and now when I say that, don't go in it with blind faith. Again, never go into a situation thinking you are the biggest, the baddest, and you're going to win, because normally you're going to lose. But, and a lot of people, when they hear that, they're like, oh, well, that's just that fucking positivity shit. No, it's not. There's a difference of believing in yourself and just being completely blinded by everything is going to work and everything is positive. No, that is not the case. There are multiple moments where I have positively freaked the fuck out before, but that's okay. We let those emotions flow. And yeah, I don't need, well, I have my own protections, but at the same time, I have belief in my own protections and my ancestors and my wards. Now with spell work, that is slightly different, and that's one of the reasons that I personally don't do that much baneful working. Why is this? Because nowadays we're on the interwebs, and it's not like 10 years ago. Nowadays, before you do a hex, you need to ask, because I ask this all the time, is that person a practitioner? Do they know that that person may be a practitioner? And with the witch talk shit, one of the main reasons people can't figure out what's going on is because there are a few witch talkers, they're not throwing the hexes. They're using some of their followers to do the spell work. So therefore, if you try to throw something, you don't know who you're throwing it at. And here recently, I made a video, which I normally do not do, which it shows my conjure cards and a return to sender spell. I honestly don't really do return to sender spells at all. But with my conjure deck, there's more and more witches every day. There really is. There really is. And you got to, like, people need to take that into account of like, oh shit, am I about to hit a witch without realizing I'm hitting a witch? And it's not really the witch you have to worry about. It's the wards that they have set up. With the last fuckery that was going online, a lot of people believe that somebody was hit and then it caused this ricochet effect. And that's why a lot of people were being hit. But again, let's not feed into mass hysteria. A lot of mundane shit happens to us regular basis. And so many people are like, oh my God, this is a magical sign. I'm sorry to tell you, not everything is a divine magical symbol or sign. Sometimes a book falls. Sometimes we have a streak of bad luck. That doesn't mean you're cursed. If you think you're cursed or you think you're hexed when you're really not, you're going to feed into that. What do I mean by this? If I randomly walk up to a stranger and pick a rock and a stick up off the ground, hold it in my hand some weird way, go up to them and be like, nah, 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 and give it to them and be like, you're officially hexed. knowing I just handed them a rock and a twig. But how our brains are is I planted that seed that they're hexed, that they're cursed, which means after that one incident, every single thing that happens to that person on a mundane level, their brains may associate it with, oh, it's that hex that witch threw. In reality, I didn't do anything. But what's going to wind up happening is they're watering that seed. And then that seed is going to wind up becoming vines. And it's going to go everywhere in their brains. They're going to connect more shit. The more shit you connect with that, the more that you're feeding a spell that nobody cast except for yourself. I didn't do a return to healing. Ooh, I like that instead of return to curse. They sent a curse for a reason, and they probably need healing more than anything. An eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. Also, that's my favorite cure, the self-fulfilling prophecy style. Yes, I also love that. I used to do something like that, but not towards a return to sender. Back when I still believed in the karmatic shit that they teach us here in the Western world, that's so watered down and whitewashed, it's not even funny. I used to do what I called karma spells. Not as obviously there are such things as karma spells, as in they fall into the lines of retribution spells. It's not really a hex or a curse, but there are certain things that you can do to help karma come back towards them. Basically, what they put out comes back. But what I used to do, what I would do 3 healing spells and then do the baneful spell. So, like in my head, I was trying to balance out the scales. Now, in reality, do I believe everything I send out is going to come back to me in some way, shape, or form? Yes, it's called the ripple effect. Opposite or equal, whatever the fuck that is. But I do not believe in karma. Um, the original definition, and there are 2, karma and dogma. No, it's not dogma. Something along the lines of that. Um, and we're witches. We conjure shit. And when somebody comes to me and I let them know, because if you ever come to me for spell work, there are a lot of things that I will tell you before we even agree to do it. One of those being, I'm the conjurer. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. And that's the word that people on TikTok need to learn from, because there's a difference from, they mix so many things, like cultural appropriating versus cultural exchange versus cultural appreciation. So many things that they're not using right, and it bugs me. But you know what? It's the fucking internet. But yes, confidence is key when it comes to your practice. And you will get to a point, and the moment you do it is the most invigorating, amazing feeling in the world. It's right up there as the first time you call yourself a witch without meaning to call yourself a witch, when it just slips out. Um, they really are. They really are. But you're going to get to a point in your practice of where you throw everything out and you just go with what your soul. Some people call it singing with the soul, or singing with your soul, or talking with your soul. What that is during the middle of a spell or a ritual, instead of reading something that somebody has already wrote, you speak what you're feeling right then. It's the most purest form of magic. Also, and I cannot believe I have to say this, you do not have to work with a deity to be a witch in any way, shape, or form. A lot of authors back then worded it to where it sounded like magic came from the deities, like it was a gift from God. In reality, that is not right. That is incorrect in so many ways. Can deities help you with your workings? Yes. But magic comes from with you. It comes from within us. Whether that is witch fire or witch blood or fucking cosmic dust, we ourselves are the people that create that energy. And that is the entire point of witchcraft. It's not necessarily learning all the history and the lore. It's being able to perfect, to be able to manipulate the atoms and neutrons around you to get a desired effect versus just waiting for life to bring it to you. And that's another misconception that, oh, well, I just did the spell, now I can go sit on my ass. No, depending on the spell you do, you have to do footwork. I haven't worked with deities into the last couple of years of my practice, and even then, I don't usually summon their help. If they jump in, they jump in. I love that. And how I do it, like Loki, I work with Loki, but not how like other people think. As in, there is one spot on my altar for his random shit that he likes to pop in and be like, yo, I want the mushroom. There are 3 mushrooms on my fucking altar next to a bottle of fireball that he most had to have had. And then other than that, like if I were to do a self-love spell or a next chapter spell or to respark the spark spell, I would call upon Aphrodite to help bless that. I've even called upon Cupid before. Um, and it's not necessarily the archetype of it. Well, technically it is. It's the archetype of it and or the energy of what Cupid is. Obviously, historically, and what we see it as Valentine's, I know that's different, but you can use things like that in your practice. If you have modern songs that give you energy, that make you excited, exactly the placebo effect. Um, but if you know modern music that gets you excited or reminds you of a hex or a spell or a curse, use that in your practice. I have a list. I know I dropped one of my playlists in the Discord, mountain music, or mountain witch playlist. Um, but there are songs that you can use in modern day. Oh, I got a nail polish called. And I crackle and had to have it. Oh, I love that. But I have songs, depending on the spell that I do, I will blare it because that goes with the witch's pyramid. For the people that don't know what the witch's pyramid is, I believe it's like 8 different techniques to alter your mind, to alter your conception or perception. There we go. Not conception, perception. What do I mean by this? On a scientific level, what most people know is like meditation. The reason you're supposed to do that, besides the mindfulness shit, is to adjust your breathing. Normally, if you were to sit down and do like breathe in 5 and then breathe out 6, I think that's a technique that I learned. What it's doing is it's controlling the oxygen and thereof lack of oxygen to your brain, which therefore alters your state that you're in. Depending on what you're doing with the actual magic that you're doing, you're either going to want to go higher or lower. Dancing, drumming, and no, drumming is not a closed practice. Just wanted to throw that out there. Dancing, drumming, music, singing. I know I'm missing like 3 or 4 of them, but those are different ways to alter that perception. You know, when you were a kid and you throw your arms out and you just spin in a circle, you were doing magic because you were going through an in-between. Spinning in a circle is a literature between the here and the other. Now, it's interesting because I did that with my, one of my exes, and we started singing, oh my God, it's the popular YouTube goddess song. I think it's We All Come From the Goddess. We started singing that, and we were actually like in a circle, holding our hands, swinging around. And I don't know if he saw it, but I saw it. I started seeing like actual fully seeing spirits that were they were like in white gowns, if you will. Not really gowns. It was more like like you would see in Greek almost. Like they were wearing a sheet almost. And it was like they were filling in the spaces between me and him. And the faster we did it, the more that I was seeing it. Fast forward 2 years later, the Witch of the White Parlor, I believe that's her name. She's on here on YouTube and Instagram. Follow her on Instagram because her posts are amazing. She did a post about it, about how it's a linear stage. It's an in-between. That's the reason we also cast circles or cast compasses, or do a crossroad, is because it's an in-between. Walking into your door or standing in your doorway is an in-between. Nature and energies are deities themselves. They really are. Like when it comes to hurricanes, tornadoes, monsoons, I believe those are a pure example of elementals because they're a force of nature, but scientists themselves have even said that hurricanes have a mind of their own. They are elementals. And that's one of the difference, which my partner, I'm trying to think of what the conversation me and my partner had last night. It was a really fucking good one. I'm going to have to start recording them. But he asked another question, like, Virginia Creeper, and I'm not going to go fully into this. My partner asked me about Virginia Creeper, and I was like, well, what are you going to do with that? What he told me blew my fucking mind, because as somebody who's been practicing for almost 20 years, I should have thought about that. He was like, well, Virginia Creeper, most other creepers, what are they? They're a nuisance. They will literally latch on and just grow and spread everywhere. Mind-blowing that I'd never thought about that. The same thing when he called me in there one day, and he's like, So why do y'all use green for prosperity? And I'm like, well, money. And he's like, but world currency isn't green. Blew my fucking mind. Left-hand path people aren't witches. They are psychics following their own path. The LHP people don't believe in God. See, I never understood the whole left-hand path. I literally understand it. I'm saying. And I agree with you. I understand that not everybody believes in gods. I'm I'm a witch at the end of the day, but how I view everything else is, for one, I believe gods and goddesses. A lot of people do not like what I'm about to say, but it is how I believe. I believe that it's the disco ball effect. In other words, it's all the same energy, but depending on who is tapping into it, we'll see a different face to that disco ball. But I do agree with you 100%. Not everybody believes in gods. Not everybody believes in demons or, God, I hate that word, infernals. I know witches who only work with angels. By the way, I would not suggest that because I have heard angels are tricksters as hell. But I, on the other hand, work with a little bit of everything. Um, you can also close your eyes and with them closed, look upward with your third eye. Yes, I love doing that, especially when I do my twilight meditation. I'm not sure why, but it has a familiar effect, and the breathing does. Green for prosperity because when it's established internally, crops where a majority way. That is actually what blew my mind because I never looked at it like that. When I asked that question on TikTok, and everybody was like, well, prosperity, growth, abundance, planting. And I'm like, what the fuck? The sky and its light affect everyone, but don't worship any of the lights. For personal experience, angels can be very malice. That's what I've always heard too when it comes to the angels. The sky and its lights affect everyone, but I don't worship any of the lights. Okay, and I don't either. I don't worship any gods. That was the one thing that, like, I never liked. And it was actually my father-in-law. He looked at me one day, and it fucked me up eternally. It's not even funny. He looked at me one day, and he goes, the difference between your gods and my gods is I don't have to appease my God. And I was like, wait a fucking second. He's onto something here. And that was when I was like, all right, I'm no longer, which I never really worshipped. Because I don't like that. Worshipping to me, it's putting them above me. And this may sound a little satanic. But at the end of the day, I'm the person with the power. I'm the person that can do these things. But at the same time, I do acknowledge that there are other beings, whether that's divine or not, that are also around us. But yeah, no, I don't worship anything. I primarily work with my ancestors, and then there are multiple deities that I work with. I don't God spouse or anything like that. I don't understand that, but that's a conversation for another day. Um, and it's also kind of like I was always told when it came to traditional voodoo, that was one of the differences between magic and voodoo. Is voodoo, you don't have to believe in it for it to affect you. Magic, on the other hand, you kind of do in some way, shape, or form. Obviously, now that I know more about voodoo, I understand why, because their system that they have is completely different than what we have. Um, but I just love hearing other people's examples, but I wanted to throw that out there that you do not have to work with a deity to be a witch. And if anybody calls you a fake witch because you're not working with a deity, just block them because they're not worth your time or energy. Um, but yeah, no idea where all of that came from, but you know, hello. Um, like there was this newer thing which I'm slowly getting around, and I also still need to see if it's a Mandela effect or not. Um, Silver Ravenwolf's, of course, it's not in here. Silver Ravenwolf's complete Book of Shadows. It's really not. It's more of an encyclopedia. There is a list of gods and goddesses for all over the world. And at one point in time, there was a god in there that was known as Menon. If you've watched Craft, you would understand where that name came from. That was the god that they worked with. I almost got into arguments with people because they're like, he's not a real god. And I'm like, yes, the fuck he is. He's just not a popular god. And I want to say it's not Polish, Portuguese. I want to say it's a Portuguese. But it's interesting, and there's a reason that I'm bringing this up. I'm a loner. Ancestor magic is only worth the effort if your family tree is full of psychics but want to help you. Mine is psychic, but everyone goes their own way. Okay, and I have no psychics in my family that I'm aware of. And there are plenty of ancestors that I have will not talk to and or go anywhere near. Um, but this is my calling. But there are things that like we talked about it in the episode twice actually. I use spells from movies, Charmed, Craft, Hocus Pocus, not really Hocus Pocus, or Practical Magic, because you can't really use any of the spell work in there. But some of the charm spells I do use, I just know that I'm not going to get the exact same results in the movie or the TV show. The prime example and the best one that I use is the one to make things unseen. It's a glamour spell. In the show, it completely like rearranged shit or just completely turned shit back to normal. But if you use said spell, how glamours work, depending on what type of glamour you're doing, if you're trying to hide an object, um, by the way, we will no longer be having conversations about CBD or anything like that because the last video that I talked about where I talked about the C word, actually got flagged here on YouTube. So that's one of the reasons that video is no longer public is because it was actually flagged, and it privated itself. Just realized that because I was about to bring up something. But if you were to, there we go. No, this planner, if you were to glamour this, what would wind up happening is when your family or your friends walk in, they'll see everything else in the room, but their eyes and their brains are not actually going to register that this book is here. That is how glamour works, depending on the type of glamour you're doing. My family is lucky to get through gatherings without a fight. Funny enough, mine normally is that too. Like when my grandmother passed away and my aunt passed away, they were the glue that like kept the family together. Because normally before then, the only time we all came together was, well, a death. Normally a death brings family together. And then there's also this newer type of magic that I don't know how I feel because it's technically just feeding a giant egregore, which is using pop star or pop culture references as deities. Now, I did figure out what they're actually doing, some of them. A lot of them, they're not actually like, say, fuck. I don't know, one of the Golden Girls. They're not actually believing that they're working with their spirits. What they're doing is they're using the physical representation of that person to represent a god or goddess, from my understanding of it. And then there's also the whole techno witchery, which I'm still getting used to. But theoretically, though, the internet in itself is a deity. Because so many people put physical time and energy into it, just like TikTok. TikTok would be a giant egregore. And you could even break that down to where it could be technically different types of egregore depending on the actual community that you fall into. Which is very interesting. And then there are also some people out there that I question. My partner showed me a video of a practitioner talking about, I think it was a Horcrux. Horcruxes are not real. Anything that we have in reality that would technically be close to a Horcrux would be a servitor. If created properly, a servitor. And that's just because depending on how you believe servitors are used, it basically fractures your psyche to create it, which is why I'd create an egregore instead of a servitor. But Horcruxes are not real. I just wanted to I just thought I'd throw that out there. Yeah, no, this is not Harry Potter. Now, with that being said, do not limit your magic, but also keep your foot in reality. Most of religions base their beliefs off of what Google searches told them. No one does their... I agree with you on that. And for anybody who rewatches this or watching this, do not use Google. Use DuckDuckGo or another type of alternative search engine. You're going to get 10 times better results. If you use Google, Depending on the term, 9 times out of 10, it's going to bring up a blog post, some paid advertisement, or something to do with D&D and or Magic the Gathering. Apparently, there are a lot of similar words that they use in them that we also use in our practice. Another thing that I'm going to address, and then this will probably be the end of this live, doing shadow work, which I do not like, does not make you a shaman. It does not make you a death witch. Doing shadow work and being a shaman do not go hand in hand. With that being said, there are a lot of shaman beliefs that you do have a shadow side to you, but it's not like shadow work. It's basically an ego thing too. But that is because you have to get all over your fears. So in shamanism, from my understanding of it, in shamanism, the shadow side is kind of your flaws, but also your insecurities, the things that hold you back, or fear. You have to eliminate that. That way, the fuck, Beelzebub, get the fuck out of here. That way, you would be able to walk between both worlds while still having a foot completely in reality. If you use Google and don't log in, or search engine won't return every possible result. Oh, embrace your shadow side and make yourself whole. Exactly, but shadow work itself, if you do not feel like called to it, don't fucking do it. If you have depression or if you're bipolar, we do shadow work on a regular fucking basis with their damn brains. And or anxiety. With that being said, death magic. Working with a death deity does not automatically qualify you as a death witch. If you suffer from depression, and or if you suffer from any type of situation or mental thing that may like detach you from reality, doing death work is not the thing that you need to do. If you are in an extremely depressive state, depending on what type of working you're talking about, you also do not need to do. Take that from personal experience. I personally do not consider myself, I don't call myself a death witch. I am a death witch, as in I work very, very much with the dead, whether that's spirits, whether that's with bones, whether that's with actual dead animals. I was pointing to my freezer because there's a couple of snakes and a couple other things that I've got to turn into wet specimens when I get the jars. But yeah, working with a death deity or a god of the underworld, that does not make you a death witch. The only reason death witching is trending right now is, for one, it's a new term. Not many people have heard it. For two, it is basically necromancy, just with a better name. And on top of that, you don't even have to identify yourself as blank witch. Just be a witch who does different types of magic. They said it shows chaos. It's chaos magic. You can just assign aspects to whatever you want. Oh, dear God, that's not chaos magic either. Although, interesting fact, I used to call myself a chaos witch. We talked about this, little fucker. I used to consider myself a chaos witch because, well, there's just my magic looked chaotic until I actually learned that there's actually a type of chaotic magic. With me though, technically I practice instinctual magic, if you want to call it anything. As in, y'all, if you've been following me for a while, you already know where I'm going with this. My fingers start to tingle. I go in this trance, and then I just start collecting ingredients. And then midway through that, normally I come back, and I'm just like, oh, this is what we're doing. And I've done certain spells where I did not even know what I was doing until after I finished. So people who can see and sense spirits without calling out or spell work, would that be considered a death witch? That's actually a very good question. Yes, no, maybe technically it would be more of a medium, I believe. Now with that though, there technically yes, almost, because if you can help that spirit cross over, theoretically yes, because that is what some people do, and there is an actual word for it. But basically, you become the person that shuffles or helps that spirit pass over. I blew my mind when somebody actually typed in the word in the comments, and I'm like, wait, this is an actual thing. It stems from, I think, Greek. But theoretically, yes, that technically would make you a death witch. Now, a lot of other people believe that you have to be trained by another death witch to become a death witch. That's bullshit, too. Not everybody needs a mentor. Trust me, I'm mentoring like 80 people. Yes, that. Cyber, chomp. Cyber chomping. Cyber chomping? Yes. Cyber chomping. It is basically you're shuffling that, I keep saying shuffle. You're carrying that spirit over. And even you will get to a point to where you summon death in itself. And there's a it's very beautiful, but at the same time, it's very dark. When I say dark, I don't mean evil. But it's very heavy, and it will stain your soul. Okay, there we go. But it kind of it leaves a residence behind. It fucked me up for about 3 days afterwards. And that's something I hope and pray I never have to do again. Because no, that's what we mean with baneful workings. When you're doing baneful working, if the energy you're not working with isn't icky and yucky and sticky, then, well, I'm not going to finish that. But that's one of the reasons I don't like working with baneful magic. It's just, no. And I don't even know if there are any modern day books on death magic. There probably are, I just haven't read them. Yes, I don't like it. My dad returned 15 hours after his death. I learned that I could hit a ghost when he showed up trying to kick my bedside all over my house. A ghost hits like a giant pumping into you. Oh! I did it for a seal. I did it for a kitten and technically my grandmother, and they both fucked me up. Primarily the kitten. The kitten fucked me up more than anything. I will state, though, I've never been that close, and this is going to sound so weird, I've never been that close to death before. Without actually me being... I was not in danger, YouTube. Fucking Christ. But yeah, it's not for the faint of heart. And the number one thing that I've heard when it comes to death witchery is they did not choose it. I did not choose it. When I went through my 2-year spiritual awakening, it was kind of thrown in there. And now I'm here, just a witch who practices different types of magic. And I do mean different types. But, yes, I think I got everything I wanted to say across. So, but yeah, that's going to do it today. Now, I did want to let everybody know who's not following me on any other social media. I am doing a new moon oracle sale. You can get a full reading for $10 via email. I'm doing 5 per day. So just message me and schedule something. I'm also still doing the honey jar, and that will also be created on the new moon. So, yeah. But, yeah, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and let y'all go. I will probably be jumping on YouTube, TikTok Live at some point later on today. I've got to make the second part of the Appalachia Folklore Omens video, and then I've got to do the Mindful Soul. I've got to post the Mindful Souls unboxing that I did. But yeah, you too, and as always, if y'all ever have any questions or anything like that, either hit me up in Discord or direct email me at firelotusthewitch@gmail.com. Poltergeist are living psychics. The dead don't have the energy requested to move stuff. My dad was a poltergeist while alive. He could do a spin while alive. He could spin pop. Oh, holy shit. You too. I hope y'all all have an amazing day, and thank y'all so much for everybody who has, commented, liked, shared, subscribed. Seriously, thank you. We're slowly getting closer to my goal. My goal for my YouTube page is to break 1,000 subscribers this year. Hopefully, I will be able to do that. But until then, I will see y'all later. Peace.